First of all, thank you for inviting me here. I'm very impressed to be here in this forum, and I'm looking forward to hear the different speakers and the discussions here, because I think that in these questions we have to learn from each other. It's a mutual interest for us all. My name is Inmar Reepalu, and I'm an architect and civil engineer from my profession. Worked for that for about 15 years, and then I've been mayor of the city of Malmö for some years. But let me start with what I'm trying to tell you here about. I will tell you about what Malmö was before, what is the heritage that we carry with us all the time when we are transforming a city, and all the obstacles we were handling and success stories, and also problems that we have dealt with during that time. Malmö is an industrial city, was an industrial city, but first of all I must show where Malmö is now. Let's see if it works. Yes. As a mayor, you understand, we put our city in the center of the world. And you can see that Malmö really is in the center. And if the pointer works, yes, but it's very... You can see Malmö there, you can see London, Paris, Berlin, Stockholm, but Malmö is just in the city center. And we have a history, about 800 years history. You can see the church there, that's from 1370 or something like that. You can see that the city is at the seashore. Here it's about 5,000 people living here. This is from 1450, these pictures. But I don't talk about every year since that, so I go over to the 20th century. Here, Malmö is a successful industrial city. It was the most rapidly industrialized cities in Sweden in the 20th century. The church that I showed before, that is located down here. And here was the seashore, and the rest is reclaimed from the sea. And there you see the Kockums shipyard, the world's biggest shipyard after the Second World War. Very efficient one. And at this time, this picture is from the 1975, around that. Then we had 265,000 people living in the city. You could see two ships laying here. This was a future project. They were very difficult to sell, these ships. They cost about, how much is it in dollars? $120 million each. They are LNG tankers, but they were 15 years before they were used. So at that time, that was an economical disaster, of course, but today they are working very well. And at that time, of course, we were very proud of the history of our city. But let's move to another 15 years later. Here you can see the same area, 1 million square meters brownfield area. You can see the crane of Tears, the world's biggest shipyard crane, that is in Ulsan today. We used it in 14 years. Ulsan has used it in 14 years, and I know that they have some problems now. Here you have the world's biggest dry dock, 450 meters long, 70 meters, which could build 1 million tons ships in there. But as you can see, things has happened here. In a period of 5 years, we lost 28,000 jobs in the city. Every 4th job went away in a period of 5 years. We went from full employment 1990 till 22% unemployment 1995. And that, of course, was a disaster for the city. We tried to help to get the Saab factory in here, but Saab was bought by the GM, and then they closed it down because it was too expensive to fabric the cars in here. And there we were standing and looking for what will come from us for the future. And we have had a political discussion. 1985, I'm Social Democrat. 1985, The Conservatives won 3 years later, 88, we won again. We raised the tax with 1%. They said we lower it 1%, so they won 1991. And then we won 1994 with, for the first time, own majority. And an economic crisis, high unemployment rate, and no vision for the future. And by the way, our soccer team, the best team in Sweden, lost the Champions League that year also. That, of course, made that the bottom went just out of the city. But what to do when you have a crisis like that, and what way shall you handle it? For us, it was a discussion that if you're looking upon the future, you can't plan a city for a period of 4 years when you have the next elections. No company will come there if they think that there will be a total change in the city after 4 years. So we must have a way to stabilize the situation. And when you have a situation where you can't find the future having new companies coming there, because what has happened during, we had all this political discussion of 1% higher or lower tax. At the same time, the Soviet Union imploded. The Berlin Wall and the Iron Curtain was taken down. And as a fact of that, of course, the labor force in eastern part of Europe was suddenly possible for the companies from the western part of Europe. 15% of the salaries, and maybe 60-70% of the efficiency, and lots of the companies, of course, moved there because that was economically sound for them to do like that. So the traditional industrial path was closed from my point of view, and we must find a new paradigm for the city. And we have another issue here also. Here you can see where Malmö is located, and Copenhagen on the other side. By the way, here we have 2 nuclear plants owned by the city. 8 kilometers away from Malmö, no problem, but Copenhagen thought it was a problem, especially after 3 Mile Island and after Chernobyl. Then there was a discussion, shall we have nuclear plants so close to the city, and especially a capital city like Copenhagen? So we had some tensions between Malmö and Copenhagen at that time. And the 1st of January 1905, Sweden became a member of the European Union. And that, of course, changed. Now we had the eastern part of Europe coming in to the western part, and Sweden became a part of the European Union. That, of course, created possibilities for us. That was a complete change of the context that the city had. So we don't look upon ourselves as the 3rd biggest city in Sweden. We are, in fact, a part of the most densely populated area in the Nordic countries. If we can foresee that we have a national border, and European Union is about not having the feeling of the national borders. So there lies the possibilities for us to make a change. But, there is always a but. We had a wonderful conference in Rio, 1992, a conference about environment and development. And that conference was a success story, in fact. And on that conference, there was a girl that was very important. This, at that time, 12-year-old Severn Suzuki from Vancouver, that gave a speech to all the national leaders, mostly elder gentlemen. And she told them, what are you doing with the world? Will I and my children be able to experience coral reefs, rainforests? Will they be experiencing clean water and clean air? What world are you giving to us, the next generation? And that was a sort of wake-up call, and you can say that the result of the Rio conference was, of course, the path to the Kyoto Protocol. Of course, Al Gore was successful, but then came Bush, and then that wasn't so much with a protocol from American point of view. But still, that had an impact. And it looks like the same when we have Greta Thunberg today, the 16-year young person talking about what we young persons think about what's happening in the world and what we expect from you, the elder generation, to do to give us better possibilities for the future. So in that way you can say that it looks a little like that way that we had to handle there. And then we had this, what we thought a wonderful project. We are going to build a bridge between the Scandinavian countries and the German motorways. And we have had the Rio conference about greenhouse gases, and we were looked upon as dinosaurs that are making these awful projects that are giving even more carbon dioxide emissions and greenhouse gases into the air. So that was a very disasterful project, and that was important for us when we started these vision projects. We invited people from the city, young people, elderly people, university people, scientists, people from the business sector, to form vision groups. What do we want Malmö to be in 15 years? And one of the groups was, for instance, Malmö as a communication hub, but a communication that is environmentally friendly. Malmö as a cultural hub. Malmö as a social sustainable hub. Malmö as a knowledge-based society. Things like that. Vision groups worked for about half a year. We paid the money for them to stay in hotels and like that to work with it, but that was made on sort of ideal profession, so they were not paid for doing this work. But that was a way of putting up beacons. And we said, we don't want to put this down in a city plan, because the plan is old the day it comes from the printing house. We want these to be beacons. In what direction do we want the city to go? And everybody in the city should be able to be a part of that process, use their own creativity with their own company. If I'm working like that, this is the way we want to move our society. That was a very important part of this inclusive process. And then the year after that, we had, after the bridge was inaugurated, we started a project using a part of the former shipyard area, and here we created the first European housing exhibition. And we said, with the help of the best of scientists, environmental scientists, we will show the world that it's possible to build a sustainable society on a former polluted shipyard area. Can we solve this? This is a problem we have in lots of cities around the world, where they have their coal harbors, where they have military harbors and things blocking the city from the sea. So we started to build that here, and that was a success story. We made the houses in the way that we, of course, put in solar collection. You know, we are in the sub-Nordic area. That means that we have quite warm summers and cold winters, and to use a lot of energy for warming the houses and cooling them. So how can we do that in a better way? You know, 1 hour from the sun, the energy from the sun during 1 hour is the same amount of energy that is used from all the population on the world during 1 year. So, of course, most goes for the photosynthesis and things like that. But can we use the solar energy in a clever way? Then we can solve the problems more. And instead of the Kockums shipyard, we had the wonderful Spanish architect Santiago Calatrava, who was married with a Swedish girl, that helped me to get contact with him so that we could have this project here. So instead of that big crane that symbolized the industrial city of Malmö, we have a house that is built here that is 100% fueled by locally produced renewable energy. And that goes for all that area. All that Western Harbor is built in that way. And the politics or the technique in it lays in this way. We collect the summer heat in the collectors here. We pump them down in warm wells 70 meters below in the cracked limestone, and there we preserve the summer heat. And then we pump up that and use that for the district heating, and use of course, pump it up to the right level with electricity from the 2 megawatt windmill that we have over there. And of course we have photovoltaic and things like that. This gives the balance of using the energy in the best way. Of course, having efficient buildings, insulating them in the best way, of course, that was also a part of it. So that was one part of changing the city, of using the houses in the best way and cleaning the area. Another challenge that we face, that is this, of course. I know the dust train that goes from Seattle to Portland also. This waste, only loved by rats and seagulls, these places. Can we use this in a much smarter way? Of course, we collected the glass and the plastic and metal and things like that, but still it was very much that went onto the landfill. Can we use the energy that is in this in a better way? And can we use it in a way that is harmless for the environment? Is that possible? That was what we were starting to do with the best of technique. And of course, separating the organic waste. The organic waste, we want to have gas from that. We changed the gas, all the buses in Malmö, 1997, from being diesel buses to getting fossil gas in them. And then we said, now we want to change it to biogas that we are producing from our own organic waste. That circular way of thinking, that people understand, that everybody feels that this is the right path for the future. So this we introduced here on this area. And you can see the result in a very short way. The year 2000, we had about 55% of the waste that went on landfill. And just 10 years later, we were down to 1.9%. Today, we are below 1% of the waste that goes to landfill. All the rest is recycled, reused, and regained energy out of it. That, of course, lowered the emission of the methane gas and things that comes from the landfill. And then the bridge, the transportation. This was an international connection from the Scandinavian countries down to Germany and the rest of Europe. Can we change this to being a bridge that puts together the Denmark and Sweden, the Zealand area and Skåne area, the Malmö and Copenhagen? Can we use this bridge in a much better way, having the commuter trains going below the autobahn that is up there, and having this bridge connecting this society instead, seeing that we can create a greater region. That is very important, of course, for a city. A city must work in the region. The city is important for its hinterland, and the hinterland is important for the city. We can't exist without each other. To understand that and building up a commuting system that is environmentally sustainable, electric trains, we revitalize a lot of new trains, a lot of new tracks also in this way, so we get much more commuting. How are we looking at the clock? Yes. So that was the change of the transportation system to be a much more environmentally friendly way of using it. And of course, we had problems in the city center. As most city centers, you had the outlets outside the cities and new department stores. And instead we said, we want this traffic to go into the city center. And we want to have the stations in the city center where we can have car-free zones between them. So we decided to drill a tunnel under the city so that we could have the train going just to the city center, and we didn't have that conflict that we have between cars and commerce. In that way, we get the people that are working there, the people that want to have the commerce there, that can use that in an environmentally friendly way. That means that the transportation, train, and biogas-driven buses, today they are more electric buses, and people should use cycling and walking much more. And we build 500 kilometers of biking paths that are in a safe way, that you can let your 12-year or 6-year-old kid go out biking by themselves. They are not close to the traffic, so that is safe way. Here you can see the nurseries are out with the children in that way also. More than half of the transportation within the city is done by walking or biking. And then the third thing, the last thing that I also want to mention here is, of course, university that was mentioned. a university, the national state want the university to be a sort of outside the city where the land is most cheap. And we said, we buy the land within the city center because we want to have a university just in the city center. For many reasons, universities, of course, are important in the way that a university with the right education pumps out thousands of new students every year. That's the best attraction factor for new companies to come there, because there you have the best educated young people there. That attract new companies. But when you have the university in the city center, that changed the image of the city. Instead of having a city with elderly people, you have all these young people in the city center. And that creates lots of cultural cafes, cultural institutions, and things like that. I'm coming now too close. This is the way the university looks. This is the former Kockums shipyard area, where you can these are university students, and you see them everywhere. We have 25,000 students in the new university. And that's changed the image of the city. Today, people that are living in Lund, the big university city, they want to live in Malmö and study maybe in Lund. But Malmö has been the place that you want to stay and live in instead. And that, I think, is very important to have that impression for the future. And companies, I mentioned companies also. IKEA built their new, most environmentally friendly storehouse here in Malmö. And here they educate all the staffs for all the IKEA companies that are opening in the world. And they have their international center in that way. Just in Malmö, in the place where we have smart city grids and like that. And they look how they tell themselves. We are CO2 neutral, we have all renewables, we have aquifer storage, of course, no light bulbs, and we have free bus transport to the IKEA. And a few more pictures here. This is from, oh, look how proud we are there. This is 2009. We were elected for being the most, let me see, we were the growth municipality of Sweden, where we had so many new companies coming up there. And that were green companies. And that was made at the same time as we got the prize from the UN Scroll of Honor from Sean Donovan and Anati Bashuko for being the holistic approach, becoming the 21st century eco-city. So there is no contradiction working with eco-friendly production and that approach and creating new works and new possibilities. So to just conclude, this is a picture about 30 years ago, how world's biggest shipyard looked. This is a picture about 20 years ago when we had the most problems there. And this is how it looks some 10 years ago. Now we have built much more there. And if I want to conclude, what I'm trying to tell you is to illustrate that it's very important when you want to make this sort of change of a city, that must be in a holistic way. It must be at the same time working with it economically, ecologically, and socially, and include all the stakeholders in it. And of course, this is the path that we are going for the future, creating a stronger and greater region. That is as important as working with the city center. The region is really the growth sector also for us. And it's also important that we challenge the things for the future. The climate issue must be within our development, that people that are living there feel that we are doing, and the city is helping us to do the right way for having a better future. And of course, the path that we are working on is that we must create a socially more equivalent society and closing the gaps that are between those that have and those haven't. And especially see that the young people feel that this is the way that we want to live in our city. This is the way that we want to contribute to have a better world in the future. So that was what I tried to tell you in some short minutes. Thank you a lot for your attention.
네, 감사합니다.